It is good to see you after a long time, Dylan and Viet. So we gathered here today to introduce the Intanify intelligent platform to the audience of the AAAI conference and to the participants of the deployable AI workshop, and obviously all those who download the video afterwards. So this whole story is based on a project sponsored by Innovate UK. Innovate UK is a funding agency, and this type of funding, they are focusing on supporting academic industry collaboration so that the research that we academics do actually does something useful and usable delivered in the real world of applications. And Intanify with the founders, Dylan and Viet, is doing exactly that. So Dylan, can you remind me how we actually got together for this fantastic project?
Yeah, well, good to see you as well, Victor. Yeah, going back about 3 years ago, researching this business idea, it's really struck us that modern companies are not made of plant, property, and equipment, which is what you'd find on a balance sheet, but are made of data, code, IP, brand, intangible assets, which are not recorded anywhere. So as we researched how we could use technology to fix that, we found that, surprise, surprise, because there's zero data, because nobody ever wrote it down properly. All of the traditional tools like machine learning and others could not be used. Otherwise, frankly, there probably would have been 200 other startups doing the same thing. So in our research, it looked like there was one way to do this, and this was to use a more traditional part of AI, expert systems. And we found that there was a professor not far away in the UK who was an expert at this and reached out to you, and that's where our conversation started.
Yes, thank you very much. That's kind of how I remember it, and it was a very sudden thing that happened. Now, we are getting a bit too academic, so why don't you show us how that really works? So can you get us through some sort of demonstration?
Cool, sounds good. So if you don't control me, I'll do this for an hour. So I will try and whip through. I'm not showing the screen.
I will warn you if you are getting too long.
Okay, cool. There we go. So this is our landing page, which is really the point of departure for the services that we offer, which are already on 3 pillars. So that's Discover, which is a product name for what is an IP audit. An IP audit is something that really all good law firms, patent attorneys would do at the beginning of each new client relationship to effectively assess what the client has in terms of assets, what the risks are, what the gaps are, what the flaws and provenance might be. So that's step 1. And that really is the point of departure for making any kind of good decision about these types of assets. The second is value, which is what it says on the tin. So it's actually valuing those assets. And lastly is what we call risk, is the product name, which is really an IP due diligence, which is what a lawyer would be doing, more on the downside rather than actually just checking what's there, but what kind of issues or red flags or skeletons in the closets there might be. So Victor, those 3 probably feel familiar to the work that you did with us, right?
And I got my microphone off, sorry. Yes, I remember very well, and I remember how many surprises I went through coming from a different area. I did not expect to find all these things under the label of IP. So I think it is really, really helpful that you help companies discover what their IP is and what belongs under that. So Can you show us something how it actually works?
Yeah, sure. So these basically correspond to 3 knowledge graphs, knowledge bases. This would be the IP audit knowledge base that we built with a firm called Matheson Squire, which is in total, I want to say about 5,000 complex decision rules. Value built with an evaluation expert called Brian Moore. And then IP due diligence built with Dentons, who is the world's largest law firm, working with their patent attorneys and IP solicitors. So I'll whip through a very quick demonstration of how this works. So In a discovery conversation with a patent attorney, they would typically be going through questions that are in business English, and we seek to mimic all of this. And Vet will tell you how we went from a knowledge base to a platform. But for any company, I mean, do you have a physical product? Do you not have a physical product? We're a software company, so we do not. When you load your product, what kind of visuals do you see? Now, these are all in discrete answers, and the reason for that is because at the end of this process, all of these answers are processed through those thousands of decision rules, as if they were in a patent attorney's mind, hearing this information and forming a model of the business and what's important. So everything's discrete, so it can go through that circle, but because we are integrated with LLMs, which Yvette will talk to a little bit more, we'd say that importance differences in the 3D could be an example, and that'll all get processed through. So all the questions like this, a company would typically go through this in probably an hour or something. You know, everything's sliders, quite easy to go through, and companies actually really enjoy this process because it's questions that they wouldn't necessarily be used to asking, getting asked. And after about 35 minutes to 55 minutes, 55 minutes being kind of quite a larger company, we've got a mental model of the business. All of those 25 categories of intangible assets have been teased out, as it were. And this we call the flash value map, which is a depiction of how the business's value would be attributed. You know, and this would obviously be different for each given business. And really what you're getting to, and there's a trick in the middle of this that we want to go through, which is using an LLM to read many documents, is to go and extract the assets that this company actually has. This we call the asset register, which you might expect to see in a traditional kind of IP audit scheme. The difference with us is this would normally just be patents, trademarks, really about 3 or 4 different things, which misses half the picture. We've got a very holistic view of the business, but really this is just the foundation of a lot more that you'd be able to visualize. So starting off with the asset graph, and this is something that is very novel. Now, all of intellectual property assets are inherently interrelated, interdependent. So you would have patents protecting inventions, you'd have trademarks protecting brands, you would have trade secrets that are associated with data assets, and we're able to visually depict all of this. And it's more than just depicting it, having this framework and this underlying lattice of intangible assets allows, for example, valuation to be attributed quite precisely, and also allows vulnerabilities to be surfaced. So, for example, where a trade secret program is not protecting a particular secret. But also just very kind of high-level depictions of the value of a business. This is our value map, which is a tree chart of all of the value in the company, and very, very quickly a board or an investor or indeed somebody new on the management committee could look at this and see, you know, very quickly that, you know, almost half the business is made up of data, and within data there's really 3 pools that kind of count the most. Looked at a slightly different way, relating things to value drivers, is this business has already got 4 components of value, the most important being this particular revenue stream. And again, probably unsurprisingly, given the prevalence of data is underpinning 3 of those 4 revenue streams. We could actually reduce the level of abstraction and kind of really dig into, you know, what is doing what. So that would be the first part, discover and value, really taking what is in the ether, what is in people's heads, what is buried in documents, and making it very explicit, and allowing decisions to be made and, you know, information to be communicated. But even more importantly than that, we're looking at red flags. And the red flags are when there was a certain context and a certain combinations of answers where, for example, the context was we selling the business, and your answer was this, but it was also that, but then also you said this other thing. And the combination of those to any good lawyer would be a red flag. So
I
we've
think
listed
that
those.
it is
Yeah.
also a very important thing that you are not talking about individual information pieces that trigger the red flags, but that it is a constellation of various bits of information, which is a far more complex depiction. And that's why it was very useful that we had very good lawyers to work with who are very experienced in this field. And if I can just pull in Viet for a moment. So how from the knowledge bases you were able to get into this platform? So, you know, the knowledge base looks far more boring. It is far more technical. And this is something that is really user-friendly and incredibly visual, which is very helpful for people.
Thanks for pulling me in, Victor, to kind of get into the nuts and bolts. Basically, it was a challenge. The kind of integrating the knowledge graphs robustly in novel operating environment, presented just high technical challenges. The base expert knowledge capture system, which you know, used was designed for usage by one user at a time via a desktop UI. And so we basically almost had to re-architect what that meant for a wide number of users, for a wide number of use cases in any number of ways, in real-time ways. The system was not meant to be used in this way, but we decided that that was what we wanted to do with it. Yes. It created terse, delimited, and undocumented file formats. So the knowledge base itself, I think it just at its core, the nuts and bolts was basically had a kind of key value and a mixture of key value and offset kind of delimiting in order to ascertain what its value. How we determined what it was doing was we created a CLI to basically parse this data and to allow us to interrogate it while also using the UI in tandem. So we would click some things on the UI and then we'd see what would come out in the file. So we did this for a few iterations, more than a few. But after a while, what we got was the understanding of the original development. And once we got that, the integration was pretty straightforward, actually. Once we understood what the offsets were, what the key values were, and things like that, tokens and things like that.
And I think that your concept of the Rosetta Stone very beautifully captures this whole idea. And as we are running out of time, I will just wrap it up at this point very quickly, just saying that it is far more still coming. So there is integration between traditional expert systems with the latest LLMs. So, for example, how LLM is feeding the part of the knowledge base as it is being created, how knowledge-based expert systems can be used to prompt LLMs as if experts were prompting them. And, you know, we are going to be back with more exciting things in the future conferences, I think, and show you where we got by integrating various forms of AI. Thank you very much.